Hello, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. I'm William Becker, and today my very special guest is my dear friend Ben Robison of ASEP. And notice there's no N in the middle of Robison. I learned that one years ago when we first met. Uh, Ben's a great guy. I first met him, if I remember right, I think it was at the first Ghost Conference we did here in Oregon City.
Yep.
And I had somebody like an hour or less before they were supposed to be on stage presenting, but they either got sick or whatever happened. Anyway, they weren't there. And Ben graciously filled in and did a outstanding job. He's somebody that knows his stuff and somebody I've worked with quite a bit at different times. And I'm one of these really skeptical people about all kinds of things, including other people. And Ben's the real deal. He's one of the ones I go to. I know I can trust, and plus he's just a good guy with a lot of fun. He and his wife both. So Ben, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on
Oh, you're
and the
welcome.
kind words, whether
Eh,
they're true or not, but
Hey, they work for me. I believe it, but
right.
maybe I'm gullible. Um, I don't know. Um, how did you get involved in all this stuff?
Oh man. I kind of was, raised in a lifestyle where actually it was okay to talk about these kind of things.
Hmm.
It wasn't shunned or, you know, you were afraid to talk about it because it would bring it on. It was very open in that respect. And so, I found myself seeing things like seances be done, as well as like, uh, perusing graveyards, just, you know, talking about people who had passed and wondering if their spirits lingered in those areas or not.
Hmm.
Um, to having my own personal experiences that helped shape me into somebody who very much was drawn to this field of research. And then it kind of was the onslaught of the TV shows, I think, like a lot of us, admittedly, who, sucked right into them
Hmm.
and found ourselves wanting to do some research of our own. So I think it was about 2007, I think, when I originally sat down with a good friend, family member at the time, and formed my first nonprofit paranormal group. And that one was called Paranormal and Occult Research Team, which was a lot easier to say, of course, than what
Right.
ASAP is.
Hmm.
But at any rate, I ran that one for 5 years, blood, sweat, tears, the whole shebang, and put a lot of energy into trying to, get process procedure and those kind of things, documentation, the interview process down pat, or at least
Right.
better off than what I felt I had seen it being done. Um, and I wasn't really at that time. I wasn't really branching out and networking as much with other paranormal groups because I was new to the scene. It wasn't that I was opposed to it. It just too busy trying to get port off the ground and
Right.
going.
Mm.
So that's kind of the way it began for me. And as things sometimes work out, sometimes it's just more heavy lifting than you want to do. And I found that with the case with port. And I decided to step down and start ASEP, which stands for Autonomous Studies of the Enigmatic and Paranormal. Um, and there's a lot of backstory and things behind that, but the gist of it is, I wanted to be able to work with whoever I wanted to work with. I didn't want
Right.
to have to worry about a team that either I was having to try to encourage or just keep engaged with the cases throughout the phases. Um,
Right.
and so, I simplified things, and I was used to kind of doing all the heavy lifting mostly myself. So I went that route, and then it opened up the ability to bring on people like yourself as consultants
Hmm.
or work with Oregon Paranormal
Right.
and a lot of the great folks that I've been able to work with over the years. Um, and so yeah, that's kind of the how it all began, per se, the genesis.
Hmm. Excellent. Um, I've seen the work you did with developing the techniques and the the forms, the questionnaires, the things that you went through when you were basically screening clients
Right.
at the beginning. And what is the importance of that? Why do you need to do that?
Well, there, and this is just I think a preference more than anything, because I know some people have, at least in the past, some other groups have chose to not provide themselves information. I'm of the mindset that by vetting out my client or clients, and obtaining as much information as I can about what claims, the history if known,
Hmm.
regarding the home, the location of wherever the said events are taking place. I'm of the mindset that that helps me in my job.
Right.
Um, I try to arm myself with as much information as possible. Does
Hmm.
that mean that it can bias you or influence you to think otherwise? I
Excuse me.
haven't really ran into that issue,
Hmm.
but I can understand why some people do have that as a concern and avoid it in that respect. But it's important, very important to me to try to get that initial, especially the preliminary phase where you're, collecting information about the clients, and
Right.
I've even gone as far as to try to understand maybe medications that they might be taking that could
Right.
be introducing other factors and dynamics that
Hmm.
could come into play. Not to try to dismiss it and say, okay, this is all related to one thing or the other.
Hmm.
I try to keep a very open mind, and that's also why I think it works for me with collecting that information in advance in the very beginning.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense to me. Even things like, are there carbon monoxide leaks, radon gas leaks, things
Yes.
like that that can create hallucinations. Hallucinations, sorry. Sometimes the mouth works and sometimes it doesn't.
Words are hard.
Yeah, they are. Especially when you're used to talking to dead people, just through here.
Right.
I have to say it out loud. Uh-oh. But I mean, I've heard of a case, and I'm not going to, I think you and I both know the people, but I'm not going to say anything specific. But it turned out the demons were, you know, psychedelic drug induced, and some of anyway, it wasn't a paranormal case. It became more of a criminal case with
Right.
Child Protective Services and a few things.
Right.
And those are important to know. I mean,
Mhm.
even making sure I I don't go any place alone. At least not on my first visit. I always make sure I have somebody with me,
Yeah.
even if it's a client that I'm meeting for psychic work I do, the mediumship. Um, we meet someplace public, or
Mhm.
I bring somebody along because you don't
Well,
know what you're getting into.
you bring up a good point too about safety. I didn't touch on that, but a quick side story was I took a case years ago where I wasn't afforded the ability to do a walkthrough and sit down and do the initial preliminary, questionnaire and interview process with the clients because I'm up here in Vancouver, Washington. They were all the way down in Klamath Falls, Oregon. So didn't get to do that, and it was kind of one of those, hey, children are involved, and so we tried to rush into it.
Hmm.
The lesson learned was, in the long run, they had loaded weapons in the corners of their house. They had um, illegal at that time, illegal grow operation going on, and so it put us in a pretty precarious situation that we did
Right.
not want to be in. So I then uh, put into the preliminary questionnaire, part of the beginning process, questions of things like that. Do you have loaded weapons on site? And are you harvesting, manufacturing, drugs of any sort?
Right.
Um, just so that way we're not in a situation where we're in the middle of an investigation and then a raid takes place for one reason or another.
Right.
That would not be fun. It would be a bummer, and
Yeah.
it just is a situation I don't want to put anybody in that I work with.
I could just see it now. You trying to explain to the firearms, alcohol, and tobacco folks that no, we're just here trying to figure out if they're ghosts or not. Honest.
Right, right.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
they couldn't
legit. We're really here to try to do some research, but the other thing that we try to do to safeguard ourselves a bit is actually get permission slips signed for the specific period of time we're there, whether it's by the tenant if they're a renter or by the owner, whoever has authority to allow us in.
Mhm.
And then that way it kind of helps in the event. I've never had a situation yet, knock on wood,
Right.
but I've never had a situation yet where I've had to deal with the law enforcement because of somebody reporting us, in somebody's home or whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, but I'm prepared. I'm
Yeah.
prepared to talk with them and show them documentation that shows, hey, we're trying to do something for someone, and here's some paperwork that might explain that.
Right. I think that's a really good idea. And I haven't done one of these or set it up myself. I've attended some, but I have people I know that have done cemeteries at night with permission from the cemetery.
Mhm.
Key word here, they're not trespassing. They
Right.
have permission, they've been lent a key to use, whatever. But they also let the police know and let them know what hours they'll be there
Right.
so that when the police or the public call in and say, wait a minute, what's going on up here? They know it's legit and these people have permission to be there.
That's also an excellent point. I've done investigations in cemeteries, and you know, uh, th- having that permission, having communicated to the law enforcement that you're there, all in help ensure that you can kind of get there, do your job, and be done with it without any kind of interruption or hiccups.
Right,
Um, and it's unfortunate that you have to kind of reiterate that it wasn't trespassing going on, because a lot of people think, oh, a cemetery, well, you're allowed to go in there at any point in time during the day, but after hours, and it's still private property, you
right.
need to have permission to be there, and if not, you're ethically and morally and legally um you know breaking rules.
And those rules have a real good purpose. There are so many people out there that vandalize. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had it, the cemetery in my area is the oldest municipally owned one, I think, in the state. And we've had people go in and vandalize the old part where people like the Barclays are buried. And,
Right.
the founders of Oregon are in this place and their graves are being desecrated because of some jerks. I've got other names for them, but not live on the air.
Yeah,
So
I've even heard of groups in an effort to get themselves out of trouble. Well, not groups. I've heard of individuals who have broken into locations or been caught, vandalizing, trespassing at, say, a cemetery,
mhm,
uh, in an effort to get themselves out of trouble. Say, "Oh no, I'm actually a ghost hunter or a researcher or something,"
right.
and it just one, it doesn't get you out of trouble. Two,
No.
it paints a darker picture for actual legitimate researchers trying to do things, and makes it harder for everybody in the long run. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, have you had anything happen in cemeteries? I mean, one of the theories is that, oh, everybody's at rest there. Ghosts don't hang around. Um, but I'm interested in your experience.
When I was a kid, I had some strange things happen. Not too many good details I could provide you, but
Hmm.
like, you know, it seemed like you saw shadow figures or like you just hearing phantom noises.
Hmm.
Um, but fast forward into my days of doing this formally, research wise, I've I remember being out in Sumter at the Sumter, Oregon, that is, at
Right.
their Pioneer Cemetery. We were holding an investigation there, and I think we were hearing like baby cries, and
Okay.
happened to be that we were kind of in the area where the babies that had died in during either birth or shortly after being born, the that section of the cemetery, it seemed like it was coming from that area. Um, I know other people have had experiences like that. I didn't, unfortunately, get anything documented or recorded
Right.
that could back that. But I struggle with the concept too, where just because you're buried there doesn't mean um, you're going to stay there or be there. But let's just back up a bit. We just went through Memorial Day not too long ago,
Right.
and I found myself sitting at my grandparents' cemetery grave sites,
Hmm.
and having conversation, telling them certain things, whatever. I could have been talking to thin air as far as I know. I even played them music from their era, and you know does it maybe it's all for the living. Maybe I did that and it was more to help me.
Hmm.
uh, but I've never had anything crazy happen where I could say, yeah, for sure, I know that spirits do stay at cemeteries, and grave sites.
Yeah. I
um,
think they visit. I don't think they stay. I think they come because sometimes my parents' graves aren't that far from me, and
mhm.
so I go periodically. And I didn't go Memorial Day. I knew the crowds were going to be big, so I brought flowers a few days later.
Right.
Things like that. And sometimes I can tell they're there, and sometimes I c- I don't sense them. I mean, just to say hi to me. That's all.
Right.
And sometimes I spend a few minutes or a little while, and sometimes I just get the vase set up with the flowers and take off after a couple minutes. It just depends.
Right.
I have had, now the Sumter Cemetery, I mean, the baby crying, I mean, that to me, it's also an example because if people don't know, the Sumter is out in the middle of nowhere. It's a beautiful area. I've been there too, including with Ben at
Mhm.
times. And um, there's all kinds of wildlife and you
Yeah.
name it out there. And you have to then listen. Okay, no, a cougar doesn't sound like a baby crying. Are there wild animals that could make this sound
Hmm.
instead of a paranormal being?
Right.
Um, oh, is that a somebody rattling over there, or is that a rattlesnake rattling over
Right.
there?
Right.
Um, and it just even in a place like that, is the shadow a bear or a person? Because the bear wouldn't be very big over there, I don't think. And
Yeah.
I think they have them in that area.
Yeah, they do. It's funny because while we were doing one of the setups there at the cemetery, Casey Goodwin of Oregon Paranormal was there. We had set up a canopy
Hmm.
that he had brought, and we had to leave him while we went back and got some gear or something like that. And I remember coming back and he said, "Man, I was hearing some weird stuff. I don't know what it was, but it sounded like something. I think, if I remember right, outside of the canopy."
Okay.
But then, even when we were at night, when we were doing the investigation, we could hear the cattle across the road. They were making noise.
Right.
I think we saw some other smaller wildlife, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There can be a lot of explanations, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan. I'm not saying I would never do another investigation at a cemetery, but
Mhm.
I'm not a big fan of it because it's not as easily able to be controlled. Not only
Right.
that, like guys like myself, I want to have, particular equipment running and things like that. And we had to rent a generator, even though they have these ones that are so-called silent generators, they still
Oh,
emit noise. And
right.
we had to try to deal with that and try to figure out ways to, squelch some of that noise that was coming off of it and hide it behind vehicles, put boards around it, things like that, to try to knock down any potential noise. Because again, the equipment we are using is pretty sensitive and can
Right.
pick up, those kind of noises. And it just makes it harder to analyze later on. Um, but, uh, you know, there's other factors, people going by, animals like we talked about. It can make it a very big challenge, an uphill battle when you're trying to get good, clean, recordings
Right.
and documentation of potential, you know, things that are taking place there.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because I also know of cases, and I agree with you, I'm 100%, but I also know of cases where people have gotten brilliant EVPs and very noisy places, lots of traffic noise and
Yeah.
things. I was with somebody. We had a radio station and TV station cameras and all kinds of stuff that people could put in the drawing to win this investigation with this TV or this radio station DJ and such. And it was it was in Oregon City that we did these things, and it was Rocky Smith and I led it, and then another couple as well of people that are I have a lot of respect for. I don't want to mention names right now because I don't think they want me to. Um, but part of the area we were in was an area that people fall, jump, get pushed off the cliff a lot.
Right.
And in fact, when I was giving the tours, we had somebody land there just a few hours before I gave a tour. Um, but the one of the other people, this other couple that was there, she was er, a very strong medium, and there was somebody we figured out to both of us who it was. It was somebody who had recently jumped, and he was just being too friendly. So we were taking a walk, and we went into this tunnel. The train tracks go over it, and there's a little walkway tunnel, and then the four-lane highway on the other side of that wall. It's
Hmm.
noisy,
Hmm.
and we asked if he jumped, and the best EVP I've ever heard said, "At peace, at peace." And I mean, it was brilliant. But
Right.
and I know of another case too where there was a very impressive EVP with lots of traffic noise, but it was really clear. But that's hard to come by. And so I tell people, do it anyway.
Hmm.
Don't because you might get something, but be aware of all the challenge.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you know, I like to try to, even my playing field as best as possible with regards
Yeah,
to that stuff, but you're absolutely right. Some EVPs come through in the noisiest places.
yeah,
I remember one of the EVPs I heard from a client who recorded it off of a digital, I think, yeah, it was a digital answering machine they had, and it sounded like an elderly man coming through and answering their question, like they were talking to each other on the phone
uh-huh.
or in the message of the phone, and he was like trying to answer them. It was really a bizarre thing I had never heard or seen before, and I've yet to see again. But
Oh,
it was really noisy. There was a lot of background noise going on, and it was just a interesting thing. I've also tried doing experiments where I've had a bunch of investigators in a room. We're all saying something for about 10 to 15 minutes and then stop right away and then see if anything. We're asking questions, is what I meant. We're
Right.
asking questions over and over about, whatever we've chose to ask the said entities at location, and then stop and then be quiet for 20 seconds or so and see if anything comes through. Now, I don't really do that anymore, because the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, if we're dealing with something that can discern and understand the conversation, or try to, we're just confusing the heck out of them.
Right.
I don't want to make it harder on the entity to try to communicate back. So I haven't really, employed that technique since then, but
Mhm.
I've done it, and I've had some weird, stuff show up that way, but not enough to make me feel like that was the way to go. Keep doing it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I one of the things that has been really amusing to me at times is I'll be in a location with people and they'll start outlining the plan and what they're going to do to try to trigger, not be mean to trigger, but the music that makes them feel like their time or leaving
Right.
something or whatever. And then the entities are sitting there or standing there saying, we can hear you, don't you? And it's like we're planning this big surprise right in front of them.
Well, I'd be guilty of that one too, I guess. But yeah, that's a good point. If they
Mhm.
can hear us, and I'm standing in a location, and I'm like, all right, here's our plan. We're gonna, play this big band swing music to
Mhm.
this generation of supposed entities, and they're like, yeah, we're right here, man. Like, we
Yeah,
hear you. I could
yeah,
see that. I could see that being kind of one of those deals where you're kind of almost, shooting yourself in the foot a bit.
right. And
Yeah.
it's to me, it's just hilarious. I mean, because we don't think if there isn't a physical presence in front of us, so often we just don't remember, even though this is what we're tuned into doing. This is why we're here.
Yeah.
Um, oh, it's great. Now, you've got a pretty major project going on. I know the First of all, do you have any smaller projects going on before the big major one I want you to talk about?
Um, Not really. I mean, there's some things that it could potentially take place. The one thing about the field of paranormal research for me, is there's a lot of potentials. There's a lot
Right,
of cases that'll come your way. You could sit there all day long and tell people, "Yeah, my phone rings off the hook," and that's great and everything, but it depends on what really comes to fruition, what really happens.
right.
So I've got potentials, for cases and things like that. No projects really going on. I kind of, especially with the pandemic and everything, it really put a damper on things, and so just kind of
Right.
writing that out, and things will pick back up, and more cases and projects will come along. But yeah, I've got that one big project.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to talk about that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with, Casey Goodwin, Jay Verberg, Neil McNeil, and Michael White on a project called The Permanence, a paranormal case study. It's really about the background and history, and showcases the old Wheeler Hotel out of Wheeler, Oregon.
Mhm,
And it also shows the methods, and the ideologies, the paradigms that we have with regards to doing paranormal research. Um, we feel like there's enough out there that shows what TV is showing as being paranormal research, but
mhm,
we feel like there's a more responsible and more critical lens we can apply to paranormal research,
mhm,
and differentiate ourselves from what is being shown in Hollywood.
right.
Um, so that one is a labor of love.
Mhm,
It's been also impacted by COVID-19, and it's slowed down a fair amount, but we have made some headway on the project and have gotten some more recorded and done for it. There's still plenty to do.
Right.
So, I know the big question is always, okay, when will it release? Well, I can't tell you exactly when that's going to happen. But, we just keep kind of chunking along, and hopefully it'll, be sooner than later.
Hmm.
I know that, if you look around at other projects or documentaries, some have come out, fairly quickly, and some have taken up to like 10 years.
Oh,
It
sure.
depends on the content. It depends on what you're really striving for. With us, we're kind of, really trying to learn and perfect, you know, the filming process and
Right.
everything. We're not so much necessarily worried about, uh, the research end of it, because I think we all align very closely in that respect,
Hmm.
and we consider ourselves students of the field. So we're not
Right.
experts and professionals or whatever you want to call it. We're people who believe that there's a way to do things responsibly,
Hmm.
and do it without being cynical but skeptical, and
Right.
try to get to the root, the real root of the situation that's going on. And I think for us, we see more living influences or dynamics at play that may attribute to what people believe are paranormal. Um,
Okay.
and that being said, I don't want to leave anybody out there thinking, well, where does Ben stand in this? Is he a believer? Is he not? I'm very
Hmm.
much a believer. I
Hmm.
believe very much in the survival of bodily death. And I believe that spirits are there. Does that mean the rest of the guys I work with are in that same category? Nope. We have differences in views and that I think that's what makes us uh, unique. I think it makes us stronger as a unit, and I think it makes us, uh, I think, kind of a checks and balance, kind of situation where, just because I'm in the mood to see a ghost or hear a ghost doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to be the reality. And
Right.
having somebody to maybe bring me back to center on this is helpful, in
Hmm.
that case.
Yeah.
So,
Well, especially if they're open to the idea that, well, maybe it's this, but maybe it is a ghost,
mhm.
because it's shown that this could make that sound or create that image, but it doesn't show necessarily it did at that particular moment. Sometimes it does, because you can hear the wind still blowing outside, or whatever. But
Well, and let's be honest. I mean, we can be all science based and tout all this equipment and gear. What we have no idea if we're barking up the right tree.
exactly.
Every bit of the equipment that's out there, none of it can detect the presence of a ghost. It's
No.
just a fact. And people who think that there are meters and gadgets and devices, especially ITC devices,
Hmm.
that are empowering them to prove that the existence of ghosts. It's not a reality, really. If it was, then they would be probably getting a Nobel Peace Prize or something like it
Right.
for their efforts. But it doesn't mean to discourage people. Okay, you're using equipment that's not proving anything. I mean, just have an open mind, like we talked about. Just know
Right.
that there are limitations, there are caveats to these things. There are pros and cons to both. Some of them are straight garbage.
Right.
Some of them are have a use. They help us,
Right.
in some areas, or at least we believe they're helping us.
Well, you
And I
can
know that.
show. Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, I was going to say, if nothing, they can show that there's a change.
Yes.
a temperature has changed, an electromagnetic field has changed.
And maybe that
Um,
coincides with like a personal experience or something that was documented on camera or on an audio
exactly.
recorder.
And
Yeah,
if you put enough pieces together from the same time, the same period, then you can start saying maybe
yeah,
this is paranormal.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always looked at case studies as being like kind of like a puzzle. You're putting pieces to that puzzle together. And the
Hmm.
more, and that's why going back to what we talked about in the very beginning of the show, um, the getting all that preliminary information, that's me putting puzzle pieces together. That's
Right.
me trying to understand and discern what is going on for this client or
Hmm.
clients. And as I collect this data, I catalog it and I try to put it together and make a see what the big story is here,
Hmm.
if there is one at all.
Yeah. Sometimes the story is somebody's lonely and wants somebody to talk to. Sometimes it's somebody with a very active imagination. And sometimes it's somebody in a really freakishly haunted location.
You hit it on the head. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, I've met a lot of people who were very lonely,
Yeah.
wasted a lot of my time, and I don't mean that to be like I I'm not, I don't have a heart. It's just that when you go to try to help somebody who's claiming that they're being terrorized or frightened or whatever their, claim is by entities, and then the long of it is they're just starving for attention or they're bored and lonely, and you're
Hmm.
like, okay, but I've got a life of my own, I've got things I've got to take care of, I've got to mow my lawn, fold my laundry, I've got to pay my bills, and this job as a paranormal researcher does not pay money. It shouldn't,
No.
in my mind,
Right.
because I can't prove to them or promise them that I can um, rid them or whatever. So I don't go down that path. And so yeah, there are times where you're like, man, that was a waste of time. There was
Hmm.
just a lot of spinning of wheels, and you know, you meet those people and you learn from it. There's something always to come out of it with,
Right.
but you may not have any kind of case to investigate
Yeah.
in the long run.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, and that's part of the deal too with your big project. All of you have day jobs,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I mean, we all, and that's the case with most people I know.
mhm,
They're juggling their personal lives, their occupational lives with their paranormal life,
right.
and that's just part of the way it works.
Hmm. Have you ever been in a situation, I mean, even younger, um, where you've thought it was really terrifying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't talk about it publicly, but I can kind of go over the top about it.
Okay. And if I
Uh,
ask something you don't want to talk about, just tell me.
I mean, I'll just, I believe that there are, and I know this is why I don't talk about it publicly. Really, is because there's so much judgment. There's so much uh, just debate over, is there such thing as demonic entities and such.
Hmm.
Um, and I am of the mindset, especially from some personal experiences I've had in my life, that that's a potential. I think
Hmm.
it's uber rare and not nearly as much as depicted by Hollywood or uh, even other groups that are out there. But I think that it's a possibility. Just because, and I put it this way as another paranormal topic, just because you've never seen Bigfoot doesn't mean Bigfoot doesn't exist.
Right.
Just because you've never experienced a demonic entity does not mean they don't exist. It's keeping that open mind that, okay, if there are good people in this world, there are bad people in this world. If there are good entities, there are bad entities. If there are angelic entities, there could be demonic entities. Um, I'm agnostic when it comes to faith and religion and such.
Uh-huh.
but I keep an open mind
Yeah.
because I believe that the second I close that off and say nope, nope, that's just not a possibility. I don't believe in it. I've shut the door.
Right.
Um, you know, I honestly think that that's an important facet to being a paranormal researcher and hearing these stories, these claims, just trying to, you know, be I guess, uh, 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 an open person to an unproven field.
Okay. That makes sense. Did you see the comment down there?
Yeah, that was very nice. Thanks,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, Matt's a good friend. Matt, thank you so much for your kind words. He's
Yes.
been on the show too.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm one of these people, I believe in a lot of things, but everything is because I've had direct personal experience.
mhm.
And with things like demons, I've met some entities that aren't very nice, but I've never met pure evil.
Right.
And I tend in my philosophy to think the pure extremes probably don't exist in in general, and I don't think pure good exists either, you know.
Mhm.
And but I'm open to being wrong. And it's just what it is.
Yeah.
Bigfoot, I believe in. I wanted to believe in it for forever, but it took seeing one. I would not believe that they existed until I could see one,
Right.
and I did. And 6 years later, I'm still trying to think if there's some other explanation for what I
Right.
experienced
Well,
so far.
I had a friend who, up until last summer, I think it was pretty staunch in saying, I've been all over the country, countryside, meaning,
Hmm.
backwoods and camping and all this stuff and remote areas. I've never seen a Bigfoot. And then he was literally at a campground with, there was a dozen or two other people, maybe, there,
Hmm.
uh, and they watched Bigfoot up on a ridge. And I think if I remember right, the Bigfoot even pushed a boulder down and it literally landed next to his vehicle. And from that point, he was like, "Man, this is for real. This is
Hmm.
this is a real thing." I
Hmm.
didn't think it was until this happened, and it scared him.
Hmm.
But he's a believer now.
Yeah.
And I think it's like you said, these personal experiences are what shape people.
Hmm.
Um, I always feel bad for some people, but we need them too. But I always feel bad for people who have not had experiences of their own that are still like, I don't get it. Like, how do you always have experiences, or how do you have as many experiences that you do? I don't have the answers to that. And that's, not something I'm interested in trying to figure out. I just want to figure out why it happens, you
Hmm.
know, what's the reason behind it, if
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. And part for me, part my biggest part out of it is I like meeting people. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter if they're dead, you know. I
They still have a story to tell.
That's right. And I love going to places and letting them tell me their stories. And I make a lot of friends that way just because they can't breathe and are in a form that most people can't see
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it isn't something valid.
Right.
Let's see. Joe's put up a comment too. Yeah, thank you, Joe. But I tell you, this program doing this, it makes me feel like God. I can make the messages appear on screen and then disappear. And
Yeah,
anyway,
it's fun,
uh,
isn't it? It's a lot of
it
work, but it's fun. I remember when I was doing the podcast with my wife, Nicole,
uh
and it was so much fun. We had a great time talking to every single guest we ever had. But for me, it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of work for my wife too. But
mhm.
especially, taking time out of your busy schedules. I'm sure you know how that works.
Oh yeah. Oh, and but mine not quite as bad. I don't have spouses and children to juggle and stuff too. And my my job is what I do
Mhm.
now, and so that it opens things up for me a lot more than it does for
Right.
most people.
Right.
Um, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I consider myself blessed by that. But uh, what? Let me see. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this because we start to get into the area that I run out of words for,
Mhm.
and that's some of the deeper metaphysical pieces and connections to universals and um, the idea too of interdimensional beings. And that's one of the things I think with like Bigfoot and some of the beings from folklore,
Mhm.
um, that they're in and out of our world, and that's why you don't see them much, if at all.
Right.
And even the possibility of UFOs or something like that being not extraterrestrial so much as interdimensional.
Mhm.
And how does that resonate? Is that something you've even given much thought to?
Oh yeah, I've given you're talking about our Bigfoot like interdimensional beings.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um I honestly I've thought about it and put a fair amount of, time into trying to look into that as well as, think on it and ponder the potential for it. And I keep an open mind. I really think that, it's likely more likely that this is a flesh and blood being that's right here in our backyard.
Hmm.
But I've been wrong on plenty of things in my life, and so I don't try to say that that's just what it is. It's just a ape running around in our woods, but it seems more possible that it could be that than interdimensional. However, there are some things that have been uh, witnessed or experienced by other people throughout the world that might lend some credence to the fact that these entities are uh, entities, beings from another area, dimension,
Hmm.
and they could be, in and out, like you say, um, by some means.
Hmm.
The only thing I always think about, and I'm like, well, okay, so they're popping in and out of our dimension, and they choose the woods because maybe they got more, area for coverage and can hide easier. Um, but you would think if there was a purpose for them to be popping in and out of dimensions, they would want to interact with more people, maybe. And why aren't they doing that? Why don't we have Bigfoot popping in and out of like big cities like downtown LA or Seattle or something? I just I've always wondered those kind of things, and that's where I keep that open mind. I'm like, okay,
Right.
what is the purpose of it popping in and out? Does it just like to come snack on our foliage here on Earth? Is it a different dimension? And there's a bigger story to why it's happening. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I've talked to them telepathically, I think.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not going to swear that this is true because I can't prove it. I've
Right.
seen them, so I can say I've seen something, but I don't have a recording of our conversations that were going on between us in my head.
Right.
And I don't take hallucinogenics, and I wasn't drinking anything. And I mean, these are questions too. You always have to ask. I don't take medication that creates false illusions or
Right.
and I wasn't overly sleep deprived and, all that stuff. But they said that they don't want to be seen or proven to exist because they don't want to get killed.
And
And
that is something that is a threat,
mhm,
um,
they said
to
no good
Bigfoot.
follows man. In fact,
Yeah.
where I saw them, we were sworn, we promised them that we wouldn't reveal where we saw them. and I
Yeah.
haven't.
It's
Um,
it's it's something I like to look at, like, with some pride, I guess. And here in
mhm,
Washington State, it's illegal to shoot or kill Bigfoot, and yet we don't
fantastic.
even know if they really exist. So,
Right.
it's I'm kind of proud that they put something in place to try to protect something that may be real.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
Hmm.
We need that here too because Clackamas County is one of the biggest Bigfoot counties in the country, from what I've heard. And the Malala corridor, I know people that have had experiences they don't won't talk about
Yeah.
along that area.
Yeah,
And
that's another thing. People will have experiences and not talk about them because they're afraid to be ridiculed or locked away because they may think they're crazy or something. But yeah.
right. Well, and it was during in that I just realized it was actually in that corridor where I had a UFO experience my junior or senior year in high school.
Wow.
We had we had a swimming hole, basically some recreational property investment that my parents had,
Mhm.
and a friend of mine and we'd go out late at night sometimes just to get away and talk, and and we weren't doing anything, just talking, and we didn't we didn't do the drug scene or the alcohol scene or anything like that. So, and I just say that not as a prejudicial, but simply to say no, we
There weren't factors.
are, yeah, there. What we saw, we saw.
Yeah.
And there was a huge saucer-shaped, round, many-storied object not very far from us with lots of multicolored lights
Hmm.
flying and it wasn't going fast. It was going but it was making pretty abrupt movements and then it went down behind a hill. And we thought for about 30 seconds maybe we could go find it because it was close enough. I mean, we could see pretty well. It wasn't one of these little flecks in the sky 5,000 miles above us.
Right.
And then we thought by the time we got to the car again, oh, we might find it. Let's not do this. And we went home the opposite direction.
Right.
But I mean, and it's unidentified. I have no idea what it was. The first time I saw one, I was on the top of a double decker bus at Niagara Falls,
Hmm.
and there was this cigar shaped thing with all these weird, funny lights. And I was so excited. We had the falls at night and lights, and then we had a UFO, maybe, and it finished its circle, and all the lights spelled out words, and it was a Goodyear blimp. And I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
But, you know, life
Well,
happens.
and it's I appreciate stories like that because that
Mhm.
just shows that you're a reasonable person and you're willing to, chalk it up as it is when you come to realize what it was. But it's like for me, my apparently I've had two Bigfoot experiences in my life. One when I was a little kid, and
Okay.
then one when I was. This is kind of interesting too, but when I was about 12 years old, I lived up in the Olympic Peninsula of
Hmm.
Washington State. And at that point in time, what was that? That would be like 1988, I think. I had what they had called a hardship license. And in rural areas, you could get a driver's license. It was just like a piece of paper that said you were allowed to drive, but you can only drive in those areas. It was mostly for farming families and such, where they had
Right.
children that needed to help and all that. What
Hmm.
I was doing was I was driving to go pick up somebody out of the woods who was working in the woods, picking ferns, salal, and all this stuff for like florists and things
Right.
like that. So on the left side of the road was clear cut, so all logged and just stumps, and on the right hand side of the highway was untouched forest at that point. And at this moment, it was starting to snow and it was sticking on the road. And here I am driving down that highway at 12, if you can believe that. Uh,
Yep.
that's not the part that's hard to believe, but the I see what I'm going to say is about a mile down in front of me, a very dark colored, upright, bipedal figure
Hmm.
come out of the clear cut and go across the highway into the wooded area that hadn't been logged in no time flat, but it didn't look like it was running. It just had a really long gate,
Right.
wide gate or whatnot. And so I tried to stop where I thought it crossed, because I was like, was that a Bigfoot? I think that was a Bigfoot.
Hmm.
Because immediately that's what came to mind. And it just didn't look like a normal human. It looked
Well,
very dark
a mi-
colored all over.
yeah, and a mile down the road, it'd be hard to see a normal-sized human.
Yeah. And I could see it. I could, tell it was a upright, two-legged creature or being or whatever.
Right.
Anyways, where I stopped, I didn't see any tracks. I didn't see anything. And then another vehicle came up from behind me. So I had to continue on. It wasn't like it was a stop sign or something like
Right.
that. It was a straight highway there. And so I had to continue on. And so I didn't do any more investigation because I was 12. I was on my way to pick somebody up,
Hmm.
things like that.
Yeah.
So, but I think it was. I really do. I think it was a Bigfoot. It fits most of the description, and
Hmm.
based on the distance and everything I saw it from, considering all that. um but I also keep an open mind. I'm like, I may have just seen something I thought was and wasn't.
Yeah.
But
Well, and like with mine too, I keep still looking to see what else could it be, and that's after examining. No, the trees weren't moving. This was moving. There wasn't the wind moving at that point. Things were getting blocked out. It wasn't just so. Hey, Casey says, "What's up, gentlemen?" Hi, Casey.
hey,
Um,
Casey.
so Casey's part of some of the programs projects Ben is working on, but I don't know. It's part of what I tell people is just because I believe something is real or happens and have had my experience, I don't expect anybody to believe me without having their own experience. I
Right.
mean, it's nice if they give me the benefit of the doubt and don't say automatically he's a cuckoo, but I expect people to be as skeptical as I am.
Yeah. I
But
think it's healthy. I really do. I think it's healthy. We live in an era now where everything can be faked so well that it's hard to be able to differentiate between authentic
mhm.
and falsified.
I'm
Um,
really getting scared about that, actually. I'm very nervous.
yeah, and so I mean, you even as a paranormal researcher who's investigating, claims of supernatural phenomena,
Mhm.
when you're presented stuff, there are things you can do to try to figure out if things have been altered. There are
Right.
apps, there are programs, there are even online sites where you can upload images and it'll tell you if it's been photoshopped, when it was last edited. And we use these tools to try to help us, but it's
Mhm.
getting harder and harder and more time involved, more expensive, to be able to track this stuff and try to in this case, I think it would be a fair way to use the word debunk.
Right.
I know that's a commonly used word, but it's misused often. But in this
Right.
case, it would be debunking somebody trying to nefariously pull the wool over your eyes, if that's the
Mhm.
correct phrase. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, and I agree, and from what I've been reading on reliable news sources like Washington Post, NPR, whatever, where the development of equipment to be able to make it look like one person is saying something they're not saying,
Mhm.
or to manipulate images is they have ways now. They're still expensive. I can't go out and buy all the software and make it work because of the price yet, but where you can't tell, even going through all the analysis, you can't tell that it's fake.
Right.
Um, and that's very concerning for me in all kinds of levels, not just paranormal. The reality with the paranormal is when we get rid of this physical form, we'll find out what's next.
Hmm.
People like me, we have a lot of our ideas about what we've seen and been told this next, but I'm not going to say that isn't a lie that we're seen or told to make life more understandable or something, or
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that there are individuals out there, sometimes even groups, sadly,
hmm
that are faking stuff, doing deep fakes and the like, to just for what? Maybe fame, I guess. I don't know. Fame, money, fortune. I
get
really
on
don't know
TV.
what their MO or their hidden agenda is. I just know in my heart, all I want to do is genuine research and keep it honest and real.
hmm
When I say I have a personal experience, I mean it. I
Right,
really did. But does that mean that proves that there is a ghost at a location, or that there are such thing as ghosts?
right,
Nope. It just means I've had an experience and I can't explain it. I'm going to continue my research and always try to put my best foot forward. I've always believed in raising the bar. I've always believed in pushing the field forward in a positive light, and doing it with integrity. Um,
right.
I've had an opportunity even in the past to be in a TV show, and I'm not banging on the people that have been in TV shows, because I have
Yeah.
good friends that have been in shows, and I respect
hmm
them and trust them and everything. But
Right,
unfortunately, you're at the control of a producer or a script writer that wants to make money,
right.
and they're going to have you do things, especially when we're talking about paranormal research, that would challenge my integrity and threaten it, and I
hmm
just won't be a part of that. And
No,
that's why it's important that I'm doing the work I'm doing with Casey, Michael, Neil, and Jay on this documentary, is to do it with integrity and know that we're not going to do any kind of deep faking. We're There's no interest in trying to get fame or fortune out of this. We just want to tell our story and show people there is another way to do things, that
right.
doesn't have to fit with what you see on TV all the time.
Well, and you all too, because I know you guys, you're all friends of mine. Um, and you, for the most part anyway, have open minds about things. There's the integrity piece, but willing that there's something else. Um, so it's not just an automatically closed door for the most part, in my experience. You're not going to say something unless you think it's true. Um, and your judgment, so many people in the field, not everybody by any means, but the critical thinking piece, the analytical piece, that you go from this step, this step, this step, this step, and then finally here, well, they miss often all or
Yeah.
many of these other steps. And so that conclusion may or may not be right, but it has less credibility to me because of so much that's skipped. It's jumping to a conclusion. And that's not something any of you guys do, at least
Well,
not in my
and
personal
it's
experience.
like the saying is, leave no stone unturned.
Right.
That's all we're trying to do. We're just
hmm
trying to simply make sure we've covered every base,
hmm
critically look at things, and if we can't um, solidify some kind of answer or explanation, then we don't, you know, we don't sit on that and keep beating a dead horse. We
Right.
we move on and we continue. We chalk it up as experience that we can learn from, but at the same time, we just try to move on to the next and see what else that can provide us, what
hmm
fruits it'll yield. Um, but yeah, it's all too often you see people jump from one thing to another. There's assumptions that get made constantly, and it's easy to do, don't get me wrong, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
and it's and it's a hard thing to try to fight. But that's why I was saying even earlier, that's why I like working with these gentlemen, is because we will make sure we're thinking about things. Nobody's
Right.
afraid to say, well, wait, what about this potential? It's not like, yeah, you had that happen. Yeah, that's for sure got to be something. And they're on your they're jumping on that bandwagon.
Right.
What we're trying to do is make sure we consider everything that can do it. It often gets perceived as being, I think Casey uses the term poo-pooer, and I get
Right.
it. People don't want peeing in their Cheerios, but
Right.
sometimes it's a reality. Sometimes you have to be the voice of reason and make
Right.
sure that that integrity isn't lost.
Right. And sometimes you can do it by saying, well, we're not going to say this isn't possible, that it's paranormal, but these are all things that could do this same thing
Right.
that are not paranormal. And these conditions were around at the
Exist.
time this happened.
Yeah.
So our conclusion is, well, this is possible. The evidence seems to show this,
Yeah.
or, something. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, and I've gotten better and better at some of this kind of thing over the years. I've I have a background, a degree in history, research,
Hmm.
sources, the
Exactly.
credibility of the sources, not just being able to look it up on the internet because, I'm sorry, Wikipedia is not necessarily reliable
Right.
sometimes, but I want a good manuscript or book in my hands that
Hmm.
I know is a reliable publisher and not a fake name on something.
Right.
Um, and it's it's a little harder. I mean, most of the people I know, I think, are good people in the field. I like them, um, and that's here, overseas, different places. I've been fortunate to meet people all over the world, and some of them are some of them are more willing to jump to conclusions than others. I think they're all honest
Hmm.
and that they're not making something up. Sometimes I think people just have an interpretation that maybe forgets to look at everything.
Yeah, the desire to want to believe.
Right.
I want to believe UFOs. I want to believe in Bigfoot. I want to believe in ghosts. The desire is there, but I
Mhm.
don't let it get in my way. I don't let it become primary, and the priority is my desire. My priority is to do, the research and to think things through and be very critical of everything that comes across in front of me.
Right.
If without it, I feel like I'm just jumping to conclusions, like you said.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of folks too who are good people, and they're just, and unfortunately, they're very naive.
Right.
They're inexperienced. They're willing to believe everything and anything they see on the internet or on YouTube, or even for that matter, memes. I mean,
Oh, I
uh,
know.
yeah, it's
Like the one Lincoln said, "Don't trust everything you read on the internet."
I love that one. That was one of my favorites.
And I bet there are people actually out there that believe it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he knew the internet was coming.
Yeah. And no, you're right. And it's part of not being judgmental in the field too. Being aware of what's going on and accepting people where they are and what they're doing, but not having to buy into it without at the same time having to say the person's a jerk or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I will say this, I'm judgmental at times, and I'm not saying that's a great thing, but I'm also thinking my thinking is it's a necessary thing at times. I think we're all judgmental at points, but
right.
what I think is the differentiator is keeping that open mind and knowing that just because I judged you about something doesn't mean I was right, and sometimes I was right.
Right.
and just keeping that open mind that when it's shown that you were in the wrong or you were mistaken, okay, fine, I retract my judgment,
Hmm.
and I'm willing to be the bigger person to know that, that is the case, and
Hmm.
learn from it.
Yeah. And, a lot of times the judgment piece would be on people's motivation and that kind of thing. And I know there's a lot of debate about the TV shows, and I have mixed feelings. If it's on if it's on a national, international show, whatever, it has one purpose. Its purpose is to make money. And there may or may not be truth in that, or it could be, it could not be. I just don't go into watching for the idea of fact. I go in for some entertainment
Entertainment.
and learn some interesting places I
Yeah.
might want to go see sometime.
Yeah.
Um,
There's something
that
you can always glean from it and pull from it.
Yeah,
And it's got its place,
yeah.
obviously.
And then there are other kinds of. I've got friends that have done some YouTube shows that have really been quite good, and I trust their integrity to know that they're not faking things.
Hmm.
Um, when something happens, I know that happened, or you get this come through on a radio, there isn't somebody in the back room making that happen. Um, but those none of those are commercial. I mean, those are all just private YouTubes. None of them are on a. Nobody's getting paid anything for any of those.
Right.
So, um, and I'm not a. I just. I think most of them should just simply say in big letters for entertainment purposes only at the beginning, not
I'll
the small print.
I'll name a show, not a paranormal show, so that way
Uh-huh.
we're safe here.
Right.
But Bear Grylls is a famous survivalist guy,
Right.
and I think he's a decent dude and everything, but he got caught reenacting a lot of these scenes. He got caught staying in hotels when he was supposed to be overnight in wherever he was doing whatever. He got caught wearing life vests going down Whitewater Rapids when he was supposed to be showing how you can actually survive these things. Well, anyways, his show before this happened, before he got caught, did not have a disclaimer.
Uh-huh.
After he got caught, they started putting a disclaimer up saying, hey, sometimes we have to reenact these things, and we're taking precautions and whatnot. And I thought that was uh I mean, yeah, they got caught, so they kind of had to do this, but it at least showed that they were willing to put a disclaimer up and say, all right, we are wanting you to understand that these are scenarios that we're trying to recreate and put you, in a better position to try to survive it. But yeah, I mean, just like anything, you could be the best survivalist in the world and go down dying in a situation because there's no guarantees.
Exactly. And I like that. I don't have any problem with shows where it's really clear that it's reenactment. There wasn't a camera there when it happened.
Right.
People are telling their stories after the fact. Well, it's pretty obvious you've got to recreate that. Um, be honest,
Yeah.
you know?
Own it.
And yeah, and those frankly are more entertaining than the supposedly live investigations for me. Um, because it's, oh, I don't know, it's just put together better.
Yeah.
Hmm. So, well, Ben, wow, it's almost quarter after.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so very much for being with us today, and I'll send you the links so afterwards, and anybody listening too, you always feel free to share the links to the shows. The more viewers, the better. And I'm not trying to be overly famous, but um, I love to see the clicks. And thank you so much, Ben. And we will have you back again soon. And enjoy the hot weather coming up. I
I
hope you have
am.
central air.
I am. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. First off, thank you very much for having me on. I've had an absolute blast talking to you. I always do.
Yeah, I
Love
did
you
too.
as a friend. You're a great person, and have a lot of respect for you. So it was a pleasure an honor to be on your show. Um, I'm enjoying the good weather. I'm even dressed
I
appropriately
know.
for it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the nice summer and everything that's gonna, be a part of it. And hopefully, as the pandemic dies out, literally, hopefully it dies out, um, we can all resume some of our normalcies again.
Yeah, seeing people live, getting a hug. What a novel
Exactly.
concept.
I miss hugs. I'm a hugging kind of person, and
Yeah,
I miss them.
I do too. I do too. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll chat soon. Bye bye.